The call comes during the only kind of prayer Jan-ho knows, the silence before violence. He's standing in a room where a man's fate hangs in the balance when his phone lights up with a number he swore he'd forgotten. But memory doesn't obey commands. And neither does love. The voice on the other end doesn't speak. Just breathes. And in that breathing, Jan-ho hears everything he lost and everything he never knew he had. When he asks the question, "You were pregnant, weren't you?" the silence that follows doesn't break him. It remakes him. By the time he reaches the hospital, rain washing away the man he was, Jan-ho finally understands, some battles aren't won with power. Some can only be won by surrendering it. In that ICU room, staring at the son he never knew and the woman who hid him from a world too dangerous to survive, Jan-ho faces his final choice. And for the first time in his life, he chooses to let go. Before we further, click subscribe, like this video and drop a comment. Tell me where you're watching from. I love knowing how far these stories reach. Your support helps us bring more thrilling stories, and trust me, you won't want to miss them. The machines don't stop for grief. Jan-ho stands in the doorway, watching monitors track his son's heartbeat in green lines across dark screens. The rhythm is uneven. Fragile. Each beat sounds like a question his power can't answer. He's never been helpless before. Not when he took his first territory at 19. Not when rival families tried to bury him. Not even when Veronica left. He's built an empire on the principle that everything has a price, everyone has a weakness, and fear is just another form of control. But here, in this sterile room that smells like chemicals trying to mask death, none of that matters. Roy, his son, though the name feels foreign in his mind, barely fills the hospital bed. 3 years old, Veronica told him without being asked. 3 years of birthdays Jan-ho missed. First words. First steps. All of it stolen by his own reputation. The boy's chest rises and falls in shallow movements. Tubes run from his small arms to 4 bags hanging like translucent fruit. An oxygen monitor clips his finger, casting a faint red glow. His skin carries Jan-ho's complexion but Veronica's delicate features, a bridge between two worlds that should never have touched. Respiratory distress, Veronica says quietly, not looking at him. Triggered by acute pneumonia. They're managing it, but his immune system is compromised. Has been since birth. Jan-ho takes a step closer. The floor is too clean, too white. Everything here is designed to save lives, and he spent his entire adult life learning how to end them. How long has he been sick? Since yesterday. But he's been fragile from the beginning. Her voice cracks slightly. I've kept him hidden. Safe. Away from anyone who might use him to hurt you. The irony cuts deeper than any blade. She protected their son from Jan-ho's enemies by keeping him secret from Jan-ho himself. You should have told me. The words sound hollow even as he speaks them. Veronica finally looks up. Her eyes are dry now, but they carry a weight that makes him feel small. So you could what? Put guards on a toddler? Turn him into a target the moment your enemies learned he existed? She shakes her head. You built a world where children become weapons, Jan-ho. I wasn't going to let Roy be yours. Yours. Not ours. Not mine. Roy shifts slightly in her arms, a small sound escaping his lips. Veronica immediately adjusts, checking his oxygen line, her movements practiced and tender. She's been doing this alone. Fighting this alone. Jan-ho realizes with sudden, crushing clarity, he hasn't lost his son. He never had him to begin with. And that loss, that absence of something he didn't know existed, hurts more than any wound he's ever taken. Veronica remembers the exact moment she knew she had to leave. She was standing in Jan-ho's penthouse bathroom, pregnancy test in her shaking hand, 2 pink lines appearing like a death sentence. Through the closed door, she could hear voices, Jan-ho's, low and controlled, and another man's, higher-pitched, desperate. She pressed her ear against the wood. "Please, I didn't know it was your territory. Ignorance isn't innocence." A sound followed. Not a gunshot. Worse. The wet crack of bone. A scream cut short. Then silence that felt heavier than the violence itself. Veronica looked down at the test again. At the life growing inside her. And she understood with terrible clarity, this child would inherit Jan-ho's eyes, his blood, his enemies. She couldn't let that happen. The decision to disappear wasn't dramatic. She didn't pack everything. Didn't leave a note explaining why. She just waited until Jan-ho left for a meeting, took what she could carry, and walked out of the penthouse like she was running an errand. The divorce papers came later. Quick. Clean. No alimony requested. No explanations given. Jan-ho let her go. That hurt most of all, how easily he released her. Seoul had been beautiful when she arrived with him 3 years earlier, a foreign city turned home through his connections and wealth. Now, pregnant and alone, it felt hostile. Store clerks switched to English when she spoke Korean, their smiles polite but distant. Landlords rejected her applications without explanation. The few expat communities she found asked too many questions. She learned quickly, invisibility was survival. Roy was born in a public hospital under a different name. Veronica Carter became Vera Kim on paper. She took jobs that paid cash, English tutoring, translation work, anything that kept her off official records. Roy's first fever came at 6 months. The hospital visits started then and never really stopped. Weak immune system, the doctors said. Genetic predisposition to respiratory illness. He needed care she could barely afford. She sold everything Jan-ho had given her, jewelry, designer bags, the Rolex she'd forgotten in her purse. Each item bought another month of medicine, another specialist visit. She was always terrified someone would recognize her. That one of Jan-ho's associates would spot her in a hospital waiting room. That Roy's fragile health would create a paper trail leading back to them. 2 weeks ago, Roy's condition worsened suddenly. Fever spiking to dangerous levels. Breathing shallow and labored. The doctors couldn't explain why, he'd been stable for months. Then Veronica noticed the man in the hospital corridor. Watching. Always watching. Different faces, but the same cold assessment in their eyes. Someone had found them. Now, in the ICU with Jan-ho standing there like a reckoning she always knew would come, Veronica holds Roy tighter. "Your world did this," she says quietly. "Not you. Your world. The one where people like you exist, and people like Roy pay the price." Jan-ho makes 3 calls from the hospital parking lot, rain drumming against the car roof like distant gunfire. The first is to Min-jun, his head of security. "I need surveillance footage. Seoul Medical Center, ICU floor. Last 2 weeks. What are we looking for? Faces that don't belong." The second call goes to a contact in hospital administration. Money changes hands electronically. Within 20 minutes, Jan-ho has access logs for every person who entered the ICU wing in the past month. The pattern emerges quickly, 3 visitors signed in under false credentials. All different names. All requesting access to room 412. Roy's room. The third call is the one that confirms his worst fear. "It's the Gwangju faction," Min-jun says, voice tight. "They've been sniffing around. Word is they heard rumors about you having a weakness. A child. Jan Ho's jaw clenches. How long have they known? Can't say for certain. But the timing matches when the hospital breaches started. He hangs up without responding. Sits in the darkness of the car, watching rain blur the hospital lights into smears of white and red. His mind calculates possibilities the way it always does: threats, responses, preemptive strikes. He could eliminate the Gwangju leadership. Send a message so brutal that no one would dare touch his son again. It's what he's built his reputation on: overwhelming, merciless retaliation. But that would only confirm Roy's existence. Paint an even bigger target on a child who can barely breathe on his own. The realization settles over him like ice: his presence here is the danger. His name. His power. Everything he's built to protect himself is exactly what threatens Roy now. When Jan Ho returns to the ICU, Veronica is awake, Roy sleeping fitfully against her chest. We need to move him, Jan Ho says quietly. Somewhere secure. I have facilities. No. Veronica's voice cuts through the dim room. I'm not running again. I spent 3 years hiding, looking over my shoulder, changing our names. I'm done. They know he exists. Because of you. She looks at him, exhausted fury in her eyes. You showing up here, asking questions, making calls, you think they don't have people watching? You walked into this hospital like you owned it, and now everyone knows. The truth of it hits harder than any accusation. He came here to protect his son and instead made him a verified target. Before Jan Ho can respond, an alarm cuts through the quiet, sharp, insistent. Roy's monitor flashes red. Veronica's face goes pale. No, no, no. Nurses rush in, surrounding the bed. Jan Ho steps back, useless, as medical staff move with practiced urgency. Orders called out in rapid Korean. Oxygen levels adjusted. 4 checked. Seconds stretch into eternity. Then the alarm stops. Roy's breathing steadies. A nurse exhales slowly. False alarm, she says. Sensor malfunction. But Jan Ho sees the way Veronica's hands shake as she holds their son. The way her eyes dart toward the door, then back to Roy. She doesn't believe it was a malfunction. Neither does he. Jan Ho sends his men away at dawn. Min Jun protests. Boss, with the Gwangju situation. Go. You'll be exposed. I said go. Jan Ho's voice is quiet but final. All of you. No guards. No surveillance. Nothing that marks this place as mine. He watches them leave from the hospital window, black cars pulling away into morning traffic. Then he turns off his phone. Not on silent. Off. The first time in 15 years. The ICU hallway is empty except for nurses moving between rooms like ghosts. Jan Ho sits in a plastic chair outside room 412, back against the wall, and simply watches through the partially open door. Veronica hasn't slept. He can see it in the way she moves, mechanical, running on something beyond exhaustion. She adjusts Roy's blanket. Checks his wipes his forehead with a damp cloth. Small, careful motions that speak of endless practice. This is what she's been doing alone for 3 years. Hours pass. A nurse brings Veronica coffee. She barely drinks it. Roy wakes briefly, whimpers, falls back asleep. The monitors beat their steady rhythm. Jan Ho doesn't move. Doesn't make calls. Doesn't strategize. He just watches the son he didn't know existed and the woman who loved that son enough to disappear. Around noon, Veronica steps out. She stops when she sees him still sitting there. "You're still here?" "Yes." She studies his face, looking for something. "Your men?" "Gone." "Your phone?" "Off." A long pause. Then, Roy's awake. "If you want to," she doesn't finish. Just steps aside. Permission. Not invitation. But it's more than he deserves. Jan-ho enters slowly, as if the room might shatter. Roy is propped up slightly, oxygen tube across his small face. His eyes, dark, alert, exactly like Jan-ho's, track the stranger approaching. "Roy," Veronica says softly, "this is someone I used to know." Jan-ho kneels beside the bed, bringing himself to eye level. Up close, Roy is impossibly small. Fragile in a way that makes Jan-ho's chest tighten. "Can I?" He stops. Looks at Veronica. She nods once. Jan-ho extends his hand slowly. Lets it rest near Roy's on the blanket. For a moment, nothing happens. Then Roy's tiny fingers reach out. Curl around Jan-ho's index finger. The grip is weak, instinctive, the way newborns grasp without understanding why. Jan-ho stops breathing. He's held power. Commanded respect through fear. Built an empire on the principle that strength is everything. But this small hand holding his finger with complete, vulnerable trust, breaks something inside him that violence never could. His vision blurs. He blinks rapidly, but the wetness escapes anyway. "I'm sorry," he whispers. Not to Veronica. To Roy. To this child who should have had a father and got an absence instead. "I'm so sorry." Veronica doesn't speak. Doesn't forgive. But when Jan-ho looks up, she's still standing there. She hasn't walked away. For now, that's enough. Jan-ho makes the calls from a hospital stairwell at 3 in the morning, his voice echoing off concrete walls. The first territory goes to the Busan Syndicate. 20 years of blood to claim it. Gone in a 10-minute negotiation. "You're selling?" Choi sounds suspicious. "What's the catch?" "No catch. Take it or I offer it to someone else." Jan-ho, what the hell is going on? He hangs up. Moves to the next call. The waterfront properties. The gambling operations. The protection networks that stretch across Seoul like nerve endings. One by one, Jan-ho dismantles what took him 15 years to build. Some buyers are eager. Others wary. All of them confused. Min-jun calls back within the hour, voice tight with barely controlled fury. "Boss, what are you doing?" The men are asking questions. "They're saying you've lost your mind." "Tell them I'm out." Silence. Then, out of what? Everything. "You can't just, Jan-ho, we have obligations." Alliances. The Gwangju faction alone will see this as weakness and move on our remaining. There won't be anything remaining. Sell it. All of it. And us? Your people? What are we supposed to do? Jan-ho closes his eyes. Sees Roy's small hand gripping his finger. Find new employers. I'm done. He hangs up before Min-jun can respond. The financial transfers take longer. Offshore accounts emptied and redistributed. Shell corporations dissolved. Jan-ho routes the money through channels so complex that even he loses track, anonymous deposits to hospitals, orphanages, legitimate businesses that will never know where the funding came from. Blood money laundered into something clean. By sunrise, his empire exists only in memory. The news breaks before noon. It starts as rumors on encrypted channels, then spills into the open. By evening, it's everywhere: crime blogs, underground forums, even mainstream news picking up whispers of a major power shift in Seoul's underworld. Korean crime boss Jan Ho vanishes, empire collapses overnight. Sudden, mysterious dissolution of Jan Ho's organization. Power vacuum in Seoul as notorious figure disappears. Veronica sees it on her phone while Roy sleeps. A nurse left a tablet in the room, and the news app was still open. She stares at the headlines, then at Jan Ho sitting in the corner chair, head tilted back, eyes closed. He looks smaller somehow. Less like the man who used to fill every room with quiet menace. More like someone who just gave away everything he had and doesn't regret it. "You really did it," she says quietly. Jan Ho opens his eyes. "Yes. They'll come for you now. Without your organization, you're exposed." "I know." "Then why?" "Because Roy doesn't need a crime lord for a father." His voice is raw with exhaustion. "He needs someone who can walk through a hospital door without bringing death with him." Veronica looks at the headlines again. Reads between the lines, the chaos, the scrambling factions, the enemies who will see this as opportunity. Jan Ho just made himself the most vulnerable man in Seoul. For their son. The alarms start at 9:47 p.m. This time, they don't stop. Roy's oxygen levels plummet. His small body convulses once, twice. Veronica screams his name. Nurses flood the room, followed by doctors Jan Ho doesn't recognize, all moving with controlled urgency that somehow feels like panic. "We need to intubate. Get the crash cart. BP dropping, we're losing him." Jan Ho is pushed back against the wall as medical staff surround the bed. He sees flashes through the bodies, Roy's face turning gray, his chest barely rising, monitors screaming red. "What's happening?" Veronica's voice cracks. "What's wrong with him?" A doctor turns, face grave. "His lung collapsed. We need to operate. Now." "How long?" "We're prepping or 10 minutes. 10 minutes feels like a death sentence. They won't let Veronica go with him. She fights anyway, trying to follow as they wheel Roy's bed toward surgery. A nurse gently but firmly holds her back. "You can't go in. You have to wait here." "That's my son." "I know. But we need space to work. Please." The doors to the surgical wing close with a soft whoosh of pressurized air. Final. Absolute. Veronica stands frozen in the hallway, staring at those doors like she can will them open through sheer force of desperation. Then her legs give out. Jan Ho catches her before she hits the floor. She doesn't fight him. Just collapses against his chest, and for the first time since he found her, she breaks. The sound that comes out of her isn't crying, it's deeper than that. Rawer. The kind of grief that lives in the marrow. She's held it together for 3 years, through pregnancy alone, through Roy's endless illnesses, through fear and poverty and exhaustion. Now it all comes out at once. Jan Ho doesn't speak. Doesn't offer empty reassurances. He just holds her, sinking to the floor with her weight against him, and lets her shatter. "He's all I have," Veronica chokes out between sobs. "He's everything." "I know. If he dies." "He won't." "You don't know that." "You're right." Jan Ho's voice is hoarse. "I don't know. I don't know anything anymore." His arms tighten around her. For the first time in his life, he has no plan. No leverage. No way to control the outcome. A week ago, he could have bought this entire hospital, staffed it with the world's best surgeons, moved heaven and earth with a single phone call. Now he has nothing but the weight of a woman who hates him and loves him and needs him all at once, and a prayer to a God he's never believed in. Please. Not him. Take anything else. Take me. But not him. They sit on the cold hospital floor as minutes stretch into hours. Nurses pass, offering chairs, coffee, sympathy. Jan-Ho and Veronica ignore them all. Somewhere beyond those closed doors, their son is fighting for his life. And they can do nothing but wait. The surgeon emerges at 4:32 a.m., still in scrubs, exhaustion written across her face. Jan-Ho and Veronica are on their feet before she speaks. He made it through, the surgeon says. The surgery was successful. We reinflated the lung and reinforced the damaged tissue. He's stable. Veronica's knees buckle again. This time with relief. Jan-Ho steadies her, his own breath coming out in a rush he didn't know he was holding. When can we see him? He's in recovery now. Give us an hour to get him settled back in ICU. He'll be sedated for a while, but you can sit with him. The surgeon leaves. Jan-Ho and Veronica stand in the empty hallway, dawn light beginning to filter through the windows. He's alive, Veronica whispers. He's alive, Jan-Ho repeats, and the words feel like benediction. 3 days later, Roy opens his eyes. The breathing tube is out. The monitors have quieted to soft, steady beeps. Color has returned to his small face. He's weak, but stable. Improving. Jan-Ho watches from the doorway as Veronica feeds him applesauce with a tiny spoon, making airplane noises that coax a faint smile from Roy's lips. He's been gone for 2 days, not far, just to a nearby hotel, giving them space. Letting Veronica breathe without his presence, reminding her of everything she ran from. But he came back. He's carrying a bag from a children's store. Nothing expensive. Soft pajamas with cartoon animals. A stuffed elephant. Organic baby food the nurse mentioned Roy might tolerate better. Simple things. The kind any father might bring. Veronica notices him. Her expression is unreadable. Can I come in? She nods. Jan-Ho sets the bag on the visitor's chair. Roy's eyes track him with drowsy curiosity. Jan-Ho kneels beside the bed, keeping his movements slow, non-threatening. Hey, Roy. The boy blinks. Doesn't smile, but doesn't look afraid either. Veronica watches them for a long moment. Then, you really gave it all up. I saw the news. Your entire organization. Gone. Yes. Why? Jan-Ho looks at Roy, then at her. Because you were right. My world did this. And I won't let it touch him again. Veronica's jaw tightens. She's quiet for a long time. When she finally speaks, her voice is steady but firm. If you want to be part of his life, part of our lives, there are rules. I'm listening. No empire. No going back to that world. Ever. Agreed. No violence. I don't care what the reason is. Roy doesn't grow up around that. Agreed. And you don't own him, Jan-Ho. You don't get to make decisions about his life just because you share DNA. You have to earn the right to be his father. The words cut, but they're fair. Jan-Ho nods. I understand. Veronica searches his face, looking for the lie, the angle, the manipulation. But Jan-Ho meets her gaze without flinching. No defenses. No masks. Just a man who lost everything and gained a chance. Okay, she says finally. Then you can stay. 6 weeks later, Roy laughs for the first time. It's a small sound, barely more than a giggle, triggered by Jan Ho making faces while trying to figure out how to properly fold a cloth diaper. But it's real. Alive. The sound of a child getting better. Veronica pauses in the doorway, clean clothes draped over her arm, and just watches. Jan Ho has been here every day. Not hovering. Not commanding. Just present. He learned to warm bottles to the exact temperature Roy tolerates. Memorized the schedule for medications. Figured out that Roy sleeps better with the stuffed elephant tucked under his left arm, not his right. Small things. Ordinary things. The kind of knowledge that comes from showing up, day after day, with no guarantee of redemption. The apartment Veronica moved them to is modest, 2 bedrooms in a quiet neighborhood far from the penthouse Jan Ho used to own. He helped with the deposit. Didn't ask to be on the lease. Sometimes Veronica catches him staring at mundane objects like he's never seen them before, a dish rack, a bus schedule, children's books from the library. The infrastructure of normal life. You could still go back, she said once, testing him. Rebuild. You know how. Jan Ho was folding Roy's laundry, tiny shirts arranged in careful stacks. He didn't look up. No. I couldn't. Your old contacts still call. I've seen your phone. I don't answer. What if Roy needs something expensive? Another surgery? You gave everything away. Then I'll work. Get a job. Like everyone else. He said it so simply. Like it was obvious. Like an empire was worth less than a child's trust. There's no romance between them. No rekindled passion or tearful reconciliation. Some things break too completely to mend. But there's something else. Something quieter. Veronica doesn't flinch anymore when Jan Ho enters a room. Roy reaches for him now when he's upset. And sometimes, late at night when Roy's fever spikes and fear creeps back in, Veronica lets Jan Ho sit beside her in the darkness and wait for dawn together. It's not forgiveness. Not yet. But it's not hatred either. Dawn breaks over soul in shades of pink and gold. The hospital discharge was 3 days ago, but Jan Ho still wakes at 5 a.m., habit carved deep from years of vigilance. He finds Roy asleep in his crib, chest rising and falling in steady, healthy rhythm. The monitors are gone. The 4 ports healed. Just a little boy, breathing on his own, dreaming whatever 3-year-olds dream. Jan Ho sits in the chair beside the crib. His chair now. Worn in from weeks of use. He doesn't check his phone. Doesn't make plans. Doesn't strategize. He just watches his son sleep and marvels at the simple fact of his existence. From the doorway, Veronica watches them both. Jan Ho in rumpled clothes, hair uncombed, no bodyguards or empire or power, just a man choosing to stay when staying is harder than leaving. He didn't force his way into their lives. He didn't buy his redemption. He didn't take. He stayed. And somehow, quietly, that became enough.